Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive right into how food retailers financially quantify consumer demand for health and transparency. When we walk down a grocery store aisle, we are literally bombarded by packaging promising us a healthier, more sustainable life. But have you ever stopped and wondered how those promises actually translate onto a corporate balance sheet? Picture a cash register ringing up your groceries. But instead of just itemizing the prices of your apples and cereal, the digital display shows total corporate revenue figures broken down by claims, like healthy generating a certain dollar amount and non-GMO generating another. It's a pretty fascinating mental image, right? We usually think of these labels as purely marketing tools designed to catch our eye. But behind the scenes, there's actually a rigorous accounting system tracking the exact financial return on these very specific words. So that brings up a really fascinating question. How do retailers actually measure the financial impact of shifting consumer trends and literally put a dollar figure on consumer trust? We all know that consumer awareness around food content heavily shapes the competitive landscape. But measuring that shift isn't just guesswork anymore. It is formalized, it's tracked, and it's disclosed directly to investors. Today, we're auditing the corporate balance sheet of transparency. Here's our agenda. 1. The ROI of transparency. 2. Monetizing health and nutrition. 3. Tracking the GMO divide. 4. The cost of misleading labels. And finally, 5. The bottom line. Okay, starting off with Section 1, the ROI of transparency and the balance sheet of consumer trust. Let's get right into it. Moving right along to Section 2, monetizing health and nutrition, or the revenue upside. Let's explore the assets side of our ledger, where retailers actually put a premium on consumer demand for healthier options. Check out the SASB metric FB-FR260A.1. This standard requires food retailers to calculate and disclose their total revenue directly tied to products marketed or labeled specifically to promote health and nutrition attributes. It's a hard, quantitative metric reported in their presentation currency. This proves that healthy isn't just a fun marketing adjective, it's an official, trackable revenue stream. But wait, we gotta be super precise about what actually counts here. The standard dictates that these attributes are strictly defined. It includes products labeled as having no additives, meaning things like no artificial sweeteners, colors, or industrially produced trans fats. It also includes products that meet the regulatory bar for relative claims, like reduced sugar, or items containing beneficial nutrients that allow for labels like rich in vitamins or good source of protein. Now you'll notice a really strict division here, and this is crucial. While claims like low fat or no artificial colors count toward this specific health and nutrition revenue bucket, retailers must deliberately exclude revenue from products labeled organic, gluten-free, or free of GMOs. Why? Well, because the financial impact of those specific consumer preferences is so incredibly massive and distinct that they're tracked entirely differently within the industry. Which brings us to Section 3, tracking the GMO divide and shifting consumer preferences. This consumer trend is so powerful, it requires its very own separate accounting line item. Under a completely separate metric, FBFR 270A.3, retailers must starkly contrast their revenue streams. They're asked to split their sales into products labeled as containing genetically modified organisms versus those labeled as non-GMO. For context here, GMOs are defined in the standards as organisms where genetic material has been altered in a way that just doesn't occur naturally. Tracking this split gives investors a crystal clear picture of exactly where our consumer dollars are migrating. And this rule brilliantly illustrates just how deep the tracking goes. The standard dictates that if a product holds an inherent third-party certification, where being non-GMO is just a baseline requirement, it automatically gets categorized into the non-GMO revenue bucket. Retailers are out there actively mining their entire inventory, looking at every single certification just to make sure they capture every single dollar driven by this consumer preference. All right, Section 4, the costs of misleading labels and the legal liabilities. We have to balance the ledger, right? We've seen the revenue upside of health claims and transparent sourcing, but now we got to pivot to the liability side to see what happens when a label lies or fails to comply with regulations. Regulators aggressively monitor food labeling, especially for retailers' private label products. Under these specific compliance metrics, companies must publicly report the exact number of times they broke the rules. We're talking everything from misbranded private label products to deceptive advertising, warning letters, and cease and desist orders. Because when a product is mislabeled, it creates a massive financial drain. This is captured by a metric that forces companies to report their total monetary losses from legal proceedings. And we aren't just talking about a slap on the wrist here. We are talking about serious adjudicative proceedings involving courts, regulators, and arbitrators. These losses represent a huge direct hit to both the company's bottom line and their brand reputation. These monetary losses provide a pretty stark contrast to the revenue upsides we talked about earlier. The standard encompasses a severe list of financial hits: civil judgments and settlements over unfair health claims, regulatory penalties, disgorgement, and even criminal restitution. If a retailer markets a product using deceptive claims just to artificially boost that health and nutrition revenue, well, this is exactly where the financial recoil is strictly measured. Now pay really close attention to this detail because it's wild. This staggering loss figure actually excludes the company's own legal defense fees. So the actual real-world financial damage is even higher than what's reported here. Furthermore, retailers don't get to just, pay the fine and hide. No, they're forced to publicly detail the context of the deception, whether it was Nutri content claims or misbranded labeling, and they absolutely must describe the exact corrective actions they've implemented to fix it, like overhauling their management processes or firing business partners. Finally, Section 5, the bottom line, where honesty literally pays. This brings our audit of the transparency balance sheet to a close. We have clearly mapped out the lucrative rewards of proper, transparent labeling right alongside the costly downside of getting it wrong. Following the money through these specific accounting steps proves a fundamental truth about the modern food retail industry. Step 1, you and I, the consumers, demand transparency. Step 2, the retailer responds by marketing specific health and sourcing claims. Step 3, every dollar of revenue gained from those claims and every dollar lost to legal penalties for deceptive claims is tracked. And Step 4, the bottom line ultimately reflects the level of trust or deception between the retailer and the shopper. Honoring the consumer's right to know directly bolsters financial success. So the numbers definitely don't lie. Consumer preferences for health, nutrition, and non-GMO products are now completely hardwired into the financial reporting standards of the world's biggest food retailers. As these rigorous standards continue to force retailers to put an exact dollar figure on consumer trust, what will your grocery receipt look like in 10 years? Will we actually reach a point where every single item we buy is mathematically optimized, not just for taste, but for total systemic transparency? It's definitely something to chew on next time you're standing at the checkout line. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.